just short and thick, it ain't gotta act through. She won't treat me like I'm the rich, cause I ain't that through. I see some things as a child that check my thoughts, but I'm trying to do right, I'm on the ass, and I won't fucking let her. Get from the side, just don't be lazy, lift your fucking leg up. To all my niggas going through a struggle, keep your fucking head up. Anything you going through, I'ma wait, this shit won't last forever. Just stay down and hold your side, don't change us like the weather. If he a fight, then he got a rule, but he ain't trying to measure. I got it, can you help me some weed to get my thoughts together? Hard in the summer, blowing hot cold, so I can rock a sweater. We came to roll it on, so we ain't gon' get back together. I know I'm blessed, I know my worth, so I can never settle. You can show yourself for you on this, I can take it. Yeah, one time to fuck up, then you can't go there. Oh dear, I got too many stuff to bring us home. I won't send my soul, ain't how I go here. I wish we was still loyal to my niggas, that my face, they could've called you. Just a new water, everyone said the bitch a blue. Just a different dope inside the club, we get to lose it. Smoking on some dope, but the girl, you got a joint in. Like a minute, I'm gonna receive a fair bitch, I'm gonna change. I'm drinking no since that change a move, we call it bullshit. You can't even hack the third, and they put it back on cocaine. Got a hook on me, got some smoke, like get it, go ahead. White girl, black, white, no, religion, no man. I look at her, slip up and lost her baby, she was 16. Ain't doing shit for free, I want 200 for a 16. Love with it, think a 30 clip with a right. She make it off of me, cause all that niggas full of pain. Don't go behind no shit you saying that you ain't me. All my niggas slide, you know what's up, and you can play me. I see the picture, clip my life, I'm moving like an HD. I'm up at the get streets, and I ain't got no fool gon' say cheese. Like a little weapon when I up it, better say cheese. Cause I told me some lessons about the store, I won't look at me. I'm just trying to take care of my people, how you hate me. When I look, I come with that, this shit was crazy. Bitch, but trying to be shit, I'ma do that.
All right, good evening, good evening, good evening. I want to thank everyone for joining us for another episode of the Get Hook podcast. This is episode number 45. As always, week to week, we have the usual suspects. This is your boy Hook.
I'm not no suspect. I'm the greatest thing popping on Monday.
All right, man. So check this out, right? So you all know that the first Monday of every month, we talk about finances. Money Mondays, right? That's been our mantra for the year 2021. So far, we talked about in previous installments budgeting. We talked about investing. We talked about credit. Tonight, we're going to be talking about mortgaging, home ownership. So if there's anyone out there who is either interested or curious about home ownership, we got you covered. So we got some guests who are certainly gonna drop some gems and give you some expert advice. What say you, Chris?
I am excited. When we said we were going to do mortgages, I said I wanted to get the best of both worlds. So I wanted to get a real estate side, and I wanted to get the mortgage lending and the broker side. And I knew exactly who to aggravate. And I aggravated them a month ago, and a week ago, and a week before that. And they're here, and I'm really, really excited.
Definitely, man. And like I said, we have some subject matter experts who are going to be talking to you. And at this time, we're going to give them an opportunity to tell you who they are. Randall, go ahead and start us off.
Well, I'd like to say welcome, everybody. I'm Randall Brown. I am a mortgage broker for Stream Mortgage Group. We're a company based out of Atlanta, but we do loans in the Southeast. Our loans consist of hard money loans, traditional loans, basically anything you need in the mortgage process. So I'll put my contact information. You can follow me on Instagram at Stream Mortgage Group. You can email me at info@streammortgagegroup.com, and I'll put everything in the comments area if you need it.
Absolutely.
How you doing, Jermaine Sims and Rhonda Sims? We're both real estate agents here in Columbia, South Carolina, veteran-owned business, investors, and podcasters. So we help the buyers and sellers through the whole home buying process and make sure they go through the process without pretty much any issues.
Right. Excellent stuff, man. And again, I appreciate you guys for joining. For the viewers, the listeners, audience, make sure you guys react. Make sure you share. Make sure you comment if you have any questions or anything. And also make sure you subscribe to and view whether it's this episode or previous episodes. We do want your feedback. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing cracking, man. I'll go ahead and start with a very basic question because in researching the subject, what Chris and I discovered, we were a little astounded that about how a lot of people are really don't know even where to begin the home buying process or what options, what resources are out there. So very general, very generic question. How does a mortgage work exactly?
So I'll kind of answer this one. Basically, a mortgage is your financing for a home. So when you go buy a car, a bank usually financing in the mortgage world, a bank does the same thing. They finance your home. The three attributes that we usually look at are credit, income, and assets. And when we say assets, we usually speak of cash to close. One thing you want to think about, this market right now is what's called a seller's market, which means, before you can get basically seller contributions, to go towards your closing costs. But in this market, it's a seller's market, which means inventory is low. So sellers aren't giving any money towards closing costs. So before, if you had at least a down payment, you could qualify for the home. But now you would need basically the down payment and the closing cost. And I don't know about the South Carolina market, but I'm pretty sure this is happening all over the US, to where sellers aren't giving up closing costs. So you need to go above the value of the home in order to win that bid for that contract, which the realtor here, he'll tell you kind of all about that. But on the mortgage side, in this market, you would usually need a little more money today, traditionally, than you would need, let's just say, a year and a half ago. So that's one thing that kind of buyers need to be aware of. There is down payment assistance available, but down payment assistance, it's kind of a catch-22. I always tell you, has the government ever give you anything for free that was worthwhile? Down payment assistance comes at a cost, right? Whether it's a higher rate or whether they put what's called a silent second mortgage on your home. When they do that, you can't do anything with that home for a certain period of time unless you pay back the money that they gave you to basically buy that home, which is the down payment. So always be wary of that. And you still have to qualify for down payment assistance. There's income restrictions, there's credit restrictions. There's a lot that goes into down payment assistance. And I always tell people, when you look at it and do the numbers, I would say people, a lot of numbers don't. It doesn't make sense. So the best thing to do is just save your money and then be ready to buy so you can focus on just that.
You said a
Randy, you
lot
are
of great
spot
things. I'm gonna ask a
on.
question about. Definitely, go ahead, Jermaine.
Yeah, I was about to say Randall is spot on. We are finding ourselves, especially here in the Columbia market, having to be very creative when it comes to buying a home. Sellers are in a good place right now. If they're able to sell the house, this is the best market to sell a house in. The biggest thing is where you're going to live afterwards, right? So, and just with builders being behind on inventory and slowly having homes being built and releasing lots, it's really hard for any seller, even in the seller's market, to even think about selling the house right now. But with being creative and actually helping people understand the process and how they can be putting in a strong offer when it comes to winning a property, especially when you have some money saved up and you're able to not have to really rely on the seller giving some money for your closing costs. We just find ourselves having to be real strategic and really creative when it comes to the purchasing a property.
You guys both said some really, really, really interesting things. Brenda, when you first came in, you mentioned traditional and hard loans. What's the difference?
So usually with hard money loans, that's for more the cash heavy buyers. With what's called hard money loans, we can really get creative with the kind of loans that we do because it's not government regulated. So if you look at your traditional FHA conventional VA, those are all government regulated. Hard money loans, you can have, I have access to private funds to where basically an individual is funding your loan. With those loans, it usually requires about 20% down for first-time home buyers or just kind of inexperienced home buyers. But you can kind of really get creative as far as income, assets, things of that nature. We don't have to basically follow the government guidelines as kind of what you would call income and what you would call assets.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. There is a question that popped up. It's from, you guys can see it there. It's Alex is saying, I have a home and I'm also months away from paying off a loan I took to purchase some land in the North Georgia mountains. Next step for me is to pay it off so I can, one, start looking for how to start building a cabin on it and to rent it out. Two, to sell the land I have now for a huge profit. Any advice?
Well, you just got to look at the numbers, right? If you want to build that cabin and you're going to rent it out, you want to see the average rent per night for that cabin and kind of base your numbers off there. If the land is selling for triple or quadruple what you bought it for, you can basically sell that land, buy new land. I'm an investor also, and I recently did that. I had a piece of land that I bought in August. It doubled in value. I sold it and bought another piece of land. So, it all depends on kind of the numbers. You just got to kind of look at the numbers and see if you want to keep that cabin long term. It may make sense. If you say, hey, I'll get the cabin rented for a year or two, it may just be easier to sell the loans. It's just up to you because construction loans are available. You just got to do the numbers.
Right. I was going to add on to that, just the return on investment, the ROI.
Yeah.
And whenever they decide to, if he's going to decide to build a house on it and rent it out, just look at when you're going to be able to get that return on your investment. And if it's going to take a little bit longer, then you may look at holding it for a little while and then selling it. And if you can sell it up front and get the money that you're actually looking to return on that investment, then make that move and sell the property.
And if you guys wanted to touch on this second question here, if you don't know Alex, he'll be asking questions the entire podcast. So get ready. But he wants to know where did you go to see the price of your land?
Oh, there's a couple places you can go to see prices of land. I know, like, if you're not a realtor, you can probably go to Zillow. Zillow is probably the most popular one on realtor.com to actually see prices of properties, or at least what they are being sold for if they've been posted for sale. If not, then you want to get a realtor involved to kind of do a market analysis of that property and to see how much it's worth, and then also get in touch with the seller to see if they're willing to sell it.
All right, good stuff. So we
see,
talked
that's
about
the big stuff right now is that we all know about home ownership when we saying we buy houses. Hook's a homeowner. I've been a homeowner. Everyone's on here right now has been a homeowner or is currently a homeowner. But it's usually been for places that we lived. So a good piece of it also is, like Alex was talking about, owning land or owning something that you're going to flip, those different things like that. The idea is that it's not the traditional, I'm just getting a house for my grandkids to visit me in, but other options that are available. And that's something that you both know about that many of us don't know a lot about. So I know some of Hook's questions are going to touch on that, but I love that Alex did ask that question.
Right.
Absolutely. And we talked about two types of loans already. We talked about traditional and we talked about hard money loans. So are those the only two types of loans, or what other types of loans are available to consumers?
Well, there's many different types of loan. It all depends on basically what you have available. We have something called asset depreciation loans. We have, profit and loss statement loans. We have, bank statement loans. We have tax return loans. There's all kind of loans. It just depends on what kind of situation fits for you. Usually with any kind of alternative loans, the down payment that you have to pay is usually more. When I say more, it's like a minimum of 20%, depending on what you're trying to do. So 20% is kind of the number to where anytime you do any profit and loss statement loans, you would need to put 20% down. Those are for business owners who write off everything on their taxes, but they have cash, right? So let's just say, a traditional business owner wants to write off everything on their taxes so they don't have to pay Uncle Sam, right? Well, this is how Uncle Sam looks at it, and this is how us as the bank look at it. If you write off everything and you're not paying taxes, then you should have an excess of cash, right? So if you're going to write off everything and not have cash, that's somebody that they're not trying to give the loan to, because if you're not paying Uncle Sam, then you should have the cash in the bank. So with those loans, traditionally, they want to see 20% down. That way they say, okay, well, you wrote off everything, but you still have the money available to put down on your home. When you don't have cash as a business owner and you write off everything, it's a red flag, because we look at it as, well, if you wrote off everything, then you should have some cash available, more than the average who do pay taxes, to put down on your home.
So do you see hard money loans usually being used more for like quick flips, or people using those for their regular homes right now?
Well, it depends. So, go ahead, Jermaine. I'll let Jermaine go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say you. So yeah, it really does depend. But you will see hard money loans and private mortgage loan lenders use it for investments, flips, and rentals. Now, it would be great to use those and be creative when it comes to being able to purchase a home. Now, the flip side to that, to being able to use one of those loans on purchasing a house, is that you may have a high interest rate. That's when you want to turn around and refinance it as quickly as possible, right? So, but that's also with you. That's also looking at, one, I'm putting down 20%, but I'm getting this hard money loan or private money loan, and this actually looks like cash to the buyer. I mean, to the seller. So when you bring the hard money loan to the table, well, this is actually technically, I got a cash offer, because it's just in turn, but you will have that 20% that you have to put down, a higher interest rate. And that's where the difference between the traditional and hard money lenders is. One, you can have the lower interest rate by going the traditional route. Only have them put down 3.5 or 5%, even 20% if you want to with conventional, if you have the money. But it's just a difference. And it's really based on everybody's situation, what they actually have going on and which avenue to go.
All right. And Cynthia has a question. And while we're talking about loans, I guess we can go ahead and address it. She wants to know what the benefits of using a VA loan are.
Oh, VA has a lot of great benefits.
Absolutely.
VA, you can do 100% financing, which basically means they will fund up to 100% of the loan. All you'd have to pay is the closing cost. And also with VA, if you're 100% disabled, VA charges an upfront VA funding fee. You also don't have to pay that. And VA, even at 100% financing, they don't have to pay what's called private mortgage insurance. And that's a big key, because
EMI.
it lowers the payment. Because any traditional loan, if you don't put down 20%, you have to pay what's called private mortgage insurance. And basically what that is an insurance, basically a guarantor to show that I didn't put down 20%. So basically the government uses it to insure their loan. So that way, if you ever default on it, they take this private mortgage insurance, collect this private mortgage insurance monthly, and basically they can write off the loan and not lose anything. But on VA, there's no private mortgage insurance. FHA conventional, they charge private mortgage insurance anytime you don't put down 20%.
Wow.
One of the best loans out there. Being a veteran and helping most of a lot of military personnel, they're like the easiest and the best ones to work with, just because of the guidelines and everything and how simple that process is.
Right.
Definitely. We appreciate your service, Jermaine. We definitely do appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'm doing
And
so good,
based on
Jermaine.
responses from the previous question, this is probably going to be a very broad question, but I'll go ahead and ask anyway. How do I qualify for a loan? I know there are a lot of options out there, but what are some of the basic qualifications?
So the basic qualifications, like I stated earlier, is credit score. I can go down to a 580 credit score, but with the 580, we don't like to see collections, disputes, and delinquencies. You can have a bankruptcy, but usually we like to see that you're 2 years out of that bankruptcy to qualify for any government programs. One thing that I want to stress, if you have student loans and you are delinquent on your student loans, you cannot qualify for an FHA loan. Okay. So if you have any student loans, get out of delinquency on those student loans. There's a program that you can get into to get out of delinquency. But for the most part, you cannot qualify for an FHA loan with student loans in delinquency. And then I'll let Jermaine, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, you hit it right on the spot. That's one of the biggest things is just making sure you have your debt to income ratio looking good. Like try to have try to have as much of a buffer there and a lot of things on your credit removed as quickly as possible, whether that's credit repair or either doing it yourself. I always tell my buyers, hey, first thing you want to do is talk to a lender. Once you get in front of the lender and they actually can give you step to step of what's going on with and give you your picture. So one of the biggest things with buying a house is what does my financial situation look like, right? And I say that's your picture, right? So whenever you take a snapshot, you get your credit score, that's your snapshot. You want everything in that picture to stay the same or get better, whether it's paying off things or if you're in a good place, then don't do anything to make your picture get worse, get a little blurry, right? So you want to just make it better or either keep it where it is.
And debt to income is real important. I'm glad you touched on that, Jermaine, because I forgot about it. But debt to income is also important. If you make $2,000 a month, right, with FHA, the max debt to income we can go is 56%. Okay, so if you look at that, basically when you qualify for a loan at 56% debt to income, basically what that is your total debts. So if you have any credit cards, car loans, and student loans go into that also, even if you're not paying those student loans, they still go into your debt to income ratio. All right. So just consider that. What we have to do is we have to do what's called a fully amortized payment for FHA or an income-based repayment plan for conventional. And basically what those do is show us kind of what that payment is going to be throughout the loan process. And that goes into your debt to income ratio also. I always get, well, I'm not paying my student loans. Yeah, you're not paying them today, but eventually you got to pay those loans off. So we need a payment in there to calculate, worst case scenario, when you do have to start paying these loans, what is that payment going to be? And we have to include that into your debt to income ratio. If you look at student loan debt in the United States, student loan debt outweighs mortgage debt in the United States. So think about that. If you total up all the student loans in the United States, that number is greater than all the mortgage totals in the United States. And to me, that's a crazy statistic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's definitely eye-opening. I didn't even. I guess you would think that, but I had no idea. So that's great. A lot of great information, guys. I hope you guys are definitely taking notes. For the viewers, listeners, make sure you guys continue commenting. If you have any questions, we do want to hear from you, and make sure you share as well, because I'm pretty sure there's someone out there in your circle that can benefit from these gems that are being dropped. And we have another question from a viewer. Kimberly wants to know, how accurate is Credit Karma to your actual credit score?
Well, so you got to think with Credit Karma, that's what we call in the mortgage industry a consumer-based score, right? So as a mortgage company, we pull the FICO algorithm, the mortgage FICO algorithm. Well, what Credit Karma does is they try to mirror that FICO algorithm, but it's not exact because it's free, right? And it's consumer-based. So basically the attributes that are in that Credit Karma report aren't the same that's in that FICO mortgage attribute report. So therefore, there's always a variance in credit score from Credit Karma to the mortgage pool, because if we did a mortgage hard inquiry every time you want to view your credit would be 400 in a month, right? What they have to do is they're trying to mirror that algorithm and say, okay, this is what we think your mortgage FICO would be, but there's always a variance. And if you remember, the three credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, they're all competitors, right? So that's why you never see somebody's score the same, because they're all competitors and they have different attributes that play into different roles in their algorithm. So that's why if you pull a credit score, what's called a tri-merge creditor score, those scores are all of them, all three of those are different because they're competitors and they're just trying to basically do the same thing, mirror that FICO algorithm, but there's a mortgage-based score and then a consumer-based score, and that's what you get on Credit Karma, the consumer-based score.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and they're all going to be different. If you look at like how all the different credit bureaus work, like really actually pull, it's just like when you buy a car. Like buying a mortgage is going to be totally different than how you're going to buy a car. The credit bureau is going to pull different, or the lender is going to pull different things from your credit for each one of those, depending on what you're trying to buy. And when it comes to a mortgage, they're going to look at pretty much all three credit reports, but look at the one in the middle to kind of give you what it is that you're looking for, or use that credit score. So it's kind of hard to say which one's the best, whether it's annual credit report or Credit Karma. The biggest thing I would tell people is this: start with a lender. They're going to pull your credit and actually give you your picture. From there, build that plan. Let us help you build that plan. Let us help you actually see where we need to get you to be able to purchase your home. And that's kind of like the biggest thing, because this thing about wanting to do it by yourself, there's no reason for you to have to do it by yourself, right? So you know what's on your credit, like being ashamed of credit. I think that's kind of like old school, right? So there's no reason to be ashamed of what your credit is. Everybody has a credit score. Everybody has a credit. There's some mistakes that we made in the past, but whatever our goal is, we just need to find a way to reach that goal. And however we can do it, whatever help, let's find a way to make that solution to build that path.
Let me tap in right, just kind of to give you some information. So I used to work for a credit reporting agency. And what we look for with credit scores is in the mortgage space, we look at the likelihood that you're going to default on this loan within a 24-month period. So that's why 2 years in the mortgage world, we look at employment history for 2 years. We look at, basically your payment history for 2 years. Everything is based on that 2-year mark. So always keep that in mind when you're looking at your credit report and things, because a lot of people will tell you, well, if you got a collection, pay it off. Well, that's not necessarily true, because if that collection is over 2 years old, it's already done its damage to your credit report, right? There's a limit that the entities require as far as like 2,000 a month. If that collection is over 2,000 a month, we just need to pay it down under 2,000. We don't necessarily have to pay it all off. So always consult with your mortgage lender, because what will happen is you will listen to people around you and it's like, oh, you got to pay off all your collections. Well, no, if you got a collection for $2,100, all I need to do, if it's over 2 years, is get it under $2,000, which is a $200 payment, right? And then I can use that and we can move forward with the loan. So always consult with your mortgage lender, because they'll tell you what to do with those collections, and it may turn around and save you some money.
That's really good information to know. That's a biggie. I've heard that about the 2-year mark. A few years ago when I was considering, several years ago when I was considering NACA, they talked about the 2-year mark, when you going back in a certain amount of time frame, but don't go clear everything off, because what damage is done. So even if you go pay it off, it's not going to jump you up 100. It's going forward, making sure that you're doing the right things as we go through, and that time frame there, making sure that you have no 30-day past dues, no 60-day past dues, nothing in your current has that look. Make sure your rent's on time. Just show that you can maintain balance and budget. And that's a big one right there. I always say you haven't damaged nothing so far gone, you can't repair it and fix it. Learning the process with buying a house, when I was 25 or 26, made me realize you're never so far gone you can't repair it. So it doesn't make you scared of numbers anymore, because it's fixable. Everything is fixable if you got the right amount of time. They have Self and several other credit repair things that help you build your credit. Chime has a credit builder thing where whatever you put in there, they use that to report to your credit, to give it a positive report that you pay on time and you're not utilizing your entire credit card balance. So there's so many options to us right now that our parents and grandparents didn't have, that there is a way to repair your credit. There's a way to fix it. It's reading and learning. What astounded me with the going into Money Mondays, and even myself, I'm guilty, is how much about money we don't know, how much about not making money work. We don't know how to make money work for us. We don't know that if you want a house, then just like she said, plan it. Get a plan and plan it. And you can plan it and follow it. You don't have to wait 10, 15 years to get a house. You can wait a year, 2 years. Some of us are 6 months away and don't even know it when it comes to buying a house. What program fits for you? And then I was just telling Jermaine, It's not the house. Don't treat your house like this is my house. My grandkids are going to visit. So I'm here forever, whatever's whatever. Treat your house like an investment that if one day you need to make a switch or a change, you can do so, because where you are today might not be where you are forever. But later when you you go from the buyer to the seller, which is something I recently experienced, you have a whole different beast to battle, because you got to get that house in order. You got to make sure somebody told me to get an appraiser in advance. I didn't. I wish I had. There's so many things that I'd love to talk about right now. We just talked about the buying aspect. Can we harp on the selling aspect? What are some things that sellers need to know in this seller's market that we heard Randall mention?
Yeah, sellers. So one right now is the best time to sell. If you're able to sell and you actually have another house that you can go to, is definitely a great time to sell. But one of the biggest things with sellers is, so it's a catch 22, right? So really, sellers don't really have to do too much right now to sell the house. They can really sell it in the condition it's in right now. But depending on how you are as a person, you might want to do as much things to it as possible, right? So, but it just really depends. But right now, sellers really can't sell their house in any condition. Just there's so many buyers on the market who are looking for a house that they really don't have to do too much. But one of the biggest things in any market, if you want to be a seller, is to do what I call a certified pre-owned home, right? So that's getting a home inspection, fixing those repairs, and getting getting it appraised. That right there is automatically going to max out your house to sell, right? So, and once you max out your house, that means you're gonna get the most money out of your house in this current market, in this current condition too. So, but there's some things that you could do to a house. Small cosmetic things are the main thing. Anything safety wise, you have to make sure your house is up to code and safe. If it pretty much won't pass FHA or conventional at any time if it's not up to code or safe. So
I wish I listened to those. Randall, you want to chime in on that one?
No, I mean, he's right. It's a seller's market. So basically, if you have equity in that home, a lot of people now with COVID, because of COVID, what people realized is the current home that they're living in, they want more space. They want more backyard. They want, just bigger homes because now they're in them more because COVID put them there. So what you see is now that it's a seller's market, there's many buyers who want to move from condos to homes, which creates a shortage. There's a shortage of homes. So now if you're a buyer, you're looking, to buy a home where you're competing with 29, 40 other people. And there's a lot of cash out here. You
yeah,
don't realize how much money's out here until you're competing up against cash buyers trying to buy the same home that you're paying $200,000 for. And so I always tell people, always save the money. Conventional is usually the best program that sellers like to see, conventional VA, because they know that person usually has money to go conventional, and with conventional also the credit scores are usually higher. So it's a better profile for a borrower. If I'm selling a home, I want the borrower with the best profile because the likelihood that loan is going to close is better. Not saying anything is wrong with FHA, but that's just what sellers are doing today. They're picking and choosing who they want to buy that house, and it's just where it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get to a couple comments. This is all great commentary, guys. Latoya said that that's an incredibly alarming statistic. Getting back to what Randall mentioned about the student loan debt being bigger than that is what's really keeping people from being mortgage ready. And she says she's still waiting on Biden to cancel hers. I mean, me too, sis.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's probably not gonna go nowhere.
Yeah, probably not gonna happen. Keep on waiting.
Yeah,
don't y'all be killing my dreams. Biden might bring me that for Christmas.
Yeah, I ain't gonna hold my breath, but hey, wishful thinking, right? And Kimberly says they should really teach this information in school and way before college. Completely agree. These are all need to knows, but that's going to be a topic for another.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate on this one.
Well, no, go ahead, Chris.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate on this one. Okay. it's no secret if you know me to know that I am not a fan of a lot of ways that we in the U.S. handle education, starting from way back when that I'm not going to discuss right now because it can get real controversial. But I feel that we've come too dependent on the school systems to teach and the school systems to raise, and the schools now have the power to teach, raise, and now they're pushing for us to medicate our kids in different situations. At this point, the same government that has done all this crooked stuff and has done all these different things is the same government we're hoping to teach us how to become wealthy and smart. We can't. We as a community, as people, we should start educating ourselves, and we need to start teaching our kids. We teach our kids, don't you leave your drink at the bar when
Yeah.
you go somewhere and go back to drink it. We teach our kids go to the bathroom on the buddy system. We teach our kids to keep that door locked if we leave them at home and don't let nobody else in. So in that same conversation, we need to be educating ourselves. I feel like we trust the schools to do something now that they never did for us. They sure didn't do for our parents. They didn't do it for our grandparents. And the schools that did do it for those people back then were the ones that was when they was separate but equal. So it stopped. So at some point, we got to pick up and educate the entrepreneurship, the mortgage, the budgeting, but we got to take the bull by the horns and we got to learn it and we got to teach it and we got to pass that down to them. We were taught not to talk about money. Don't worry about nobody's money. Don't look at your mama passcode when she at the register. Stay out my pocketbook. We so scared about money, we don't even teach our kids about it because nobody taught us. But at some point, we got too many resources, not for us to not. I'm gonna teach mine. I want my kids to go with me when I go in the office to buy my next home. I want my kids to hear what you got to do. I want to talk about credit. I want to talk about LLCs and S corps and all these different things, budgets and building. I told my son the other day, he asked for earbuds. He said, "Well, how much money I got in my money in my account and my savings?" Oh, well, then let's go check that. Let's have those conversations because we trust in the school system that failed us. So why it's gonna do well for our kids?
I
Yeah.
mean, I agree with that to I agree with that to an extent. But I think part of the reason that they don't teach it is because they don't want us to become wealthy or smart. That's one of the reasons they withhold a lot of the information. But I completely agree that we obviously, because they don't teach it in schools, that we need to obviously educate ourselves
They're
as a
not
people.
going
Go
to.
ahead, Jimmy.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah. So for both of us, so I think one, it definitely needs to be taught in the house, but also in the school, right? So, and there's a reason why. All right, so 'cause there are some families and some people who just won't be like either working 3 jobs, they won't be able to have to spend that time with their kids to teach them, right? So, but if they're at least getting it somewhere, even in the schools or either in mentorship or at some additional program, after school programs that you involve your kids in, that's at least the opportunity for them to hear it somewhere, even if it's not their parents. Now, I do totally agree. Like, our parents really didn't have all the information that they needed to be able to raise us to know money and how to grow money. But someone in there has to be able to take the time and say, you know what, I'm gonna teach myself, I'm gonna teach my kids, and I'm gonna teach others, and just not hold it to yourself and just kind of keep on spreading it, because it's, you just have to be able to reach one that's going to be willing to teach somebody else too. So
I think we should teach it in the churches, and that's my honest to God truth. That's one
So
place that's not neglectful. That's one place you
yeah,
can't say your
everybody go.
mama don't take you. You can't say we
Good luck
don't
with
go.
that.
We got a tithe in
Yeah,
church.
yeah, yeah.
So why don't we teach it in church? Why can't you have a financial class in the church? We teach all other stuff. So why can't we teach that? That is our safe haven to learn it. So why
My
don't
church
you
do.
have that? We have these Sunday Bible studies, your grandmas and everybody's forcing. I'm not saying it is right or wrong, but they do. They force for you to be there. They push for us to be there. Why aren't we using that to teach that as well? Because that's something that's going to make us better. If the Bible tells us that you don't want to be a slave to debt, so teach me how to stay out of it.
Yeah,
That
be
is
a
something
steward
that
of your
should be
money.
taught as well. The school system is ran by the government. We all have declared that people don't trust. So use it in the place we do. Teach it at the churches. Thank you. Gigi and them teach it at their church. There are some churches that teach this stuff. My aunt had me at Rehoboth years ago, where a person who was a financial advisor held a debt class. I still got the book. There are churches that do this, but that's where the pressure needs to go, that we need to teach it. Not the schools, but the churches and the places that we know we need to be in, and we know that we go, and we know we have access to. So if your mom does work 3 jobs, I bet grandma take you to church.
and I would say it starts, I mean, it's simple. If I can teach a young person how to manage a checkbook, that teaches responsibility, monetary responsibility, right? So, and just like you said, the funny thing is, I remember when I was in college, I went to church with a friend of mine who was not of the same race. And I remember sitting in a money management class before the church started. And it was a wow factor to me because I've been going to church all my life and never experienced this. And, me growing up, I heard, the crazy, all thing I always heard was credit cards are the devil. Don't get any credit cards. Well, guess what I learned when I got older? Credit card debt makes up 35% of your credit score, right? So you think you need credit cards? You do. Because if you see your score getting stagnant, it's because there's no revolving debt in there. Then you're not showing any responsibility with revolving debt, and therefore your score may be stagnant. Not saying that you can't have a 740 with no credit cards, but the likelihood is very slim.
It's a biggie. Like we have people posting right now with churches. Our comments should be flooded with churches that teach it. And I'm very candid. Like you just said, some white churches teach it. So black churches, we need to push it. And like she said, the problem we have is people attending it. You gotta get out there and get in there and learn that stuff. We need to take that stuff and make it fun for our kids. I agree with Michelle. Pushing the stuff with finances. Stop making money the thing we don't talk about. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about money on dates. You don't want to ask that. That's not an uncomfortable conversation. That's a real talk conversation. Let's chat.
That's a
And
grown
that's
folk
something that
conversation.
you have to deal with later. So talk about it. Just because somebody says they have a certain credit score, they got this going on, if you know how to fix it, where you are today might not be where you are in 12 months, but we scared to talk about it.
Yeah. And
No,
what
It
you
ain't a
see
sin
in,
to talk about money.
what you see in other communities also is they talk about income and things like that. Hey, how much you making? Because they know it's a community aspect. They're not afraid to talk about it because they say, well, I do this and I make this much. You should come over here because they're not paying you enough. And I always see that in other, you know, not religions, but with other communities other than us, they talk about this stuff. They tell each other how much they make and what are they doing. So that way they can all be on an even playing field as far as income. Because what you'll see sometimes is I'm doing the same job as somebody else and I'm making half of what they're making, right? But if we had awareness and basically what that particular job and salary paid, it'll make things, even, not even even, but just it'll be an equal level playing field because now we know, okay, well, I'm being undervalued, and which, like I said, income creates wealth because the more I make, the more home I can afford.
And that's where we started with Money Monday. We had first on our group, we had Teresa, we had Tisha, we had Travis, but we had a high level overview. And then the lineup we've done every month then led up to mortgage. We first did a high level overview, then we did budget. Then after we did budget, we talked about saving. Then after we talked about saving, we did credit. Then after we talked about credit, we did investments. And we just went down the line with a lot of different things. And we did that on purpose to get you to mortgage. Why? Because you don't just jump out in there and go, yep, it's house time for me. All of that stuff takes into consideration to get you to that step. It's a process, it's a plan, it's a journey, it's a marathon. After you buy the house that you live in, don't stop there. Consider buying the house that you rent. Consider buying the house that you flip. Consider buying the house that you sell. I have heard people say, all I want to do is be able to take care of my family and be good in my house. But you can be doing that by 26. So what are you going to do with the rest of them years that God has you on this earth? And that's where the mortgage education comes in. We don't know that it don't just stop at the house. I've seen Black people are scared. My people, we get a house and we got to hold on to it. We can't sell. We can't do nothing. We can't leave this house. That's all we're going to ever get. That's not true. People buy and sell houses all the time. Every time they move out into another state, they buy and sell houses. So the opportunity to see this as an investment that you can do different things with and an asset that you can exchange is a reality. But unless we know, and I'm learning still at 35 to budget, learn credit, learn savings, learning debt to income ratio, return on investment. Unless we know these terms, like we know our names, we don't even know the power we have with the stuff that we own.
Yeah, man. This is definitely all good stuff. Jermaine, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, Chris, you are spot on. So right, so a lot of times we all don't really create that plan to build wealth, right? And I'm gonna take y'all down a path that kind of is where me and my wife are with how we building our wealth as well as for our kids, right? So seriously, if you see, one is, well, first let me get this statistic out of the way. First, black men, we need to do better, right? So think about it like this. So it's only 7% of African American men, single African American men, will even think about buying a house, right? Whereas if you think about, if we actually stepped into the place of actually saying, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and buy myself a house as soon as I'm able to actually get an opportunity to, that changes the whole dynamic for your family, right? And it takes usually a woman's motivation to kind of push us to kind of be like, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and buy a house because I'm doing it for my wife, my girl, to prove something or something like that. But we just need to go ahead and just think about and be like women. Because I know my wife, she bought a house straight after she got out of high school. I mean, not high school, I'm sorry, college. But me, I was like, nope, I'm not thinking about buying no house right now. I got other things that I'm trying to do, get career going, all that type of stuff. But if I would actually change that, take you back a little bit further than that, like, so one biggest thing is, what is the problem with us as our African American community providing a house for our kids to go to for college? When they decide to go to college, buying their house. And their job while they're in college is to find roommates to actually rent out the other rooms in their house. That's every single one of my kids. They're gonna get 5 houses to when they go to college, and then I'm gonna buy them a house when they get to wherever close by their college they don't get. Their job while they're in college is to rent out those rooms. That's their job. Now you got income coming in. You're gonna have your those 5 rentals for to be able to pay for your schooling. That's the plan, and you keep on growing from there. Whatever you do after that, that's what I'm giving you. That's my hands off. All right, nope, I'm moving off from there, right? So because we don't have our investments, but that's what I'm giving to you for your college is your graduation. We got 4 kids, so that's a lot, right? So so that's where we're gonna absolutely be doing for our kids. But if you think about it, as you actually are planning that out and you're actually looking at investments, it's really not that hard. It's really just the knowledge. Once you actually get the knowledge behind it to invest and actually build out that plan, it will be easy for you. I promise you. And just building that those people around you. So that's really what the biggest thing is actually building that plan to actually just get to your first one. Once you get your first one, you'll find out how to get to the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. And you just keep on working until you get the multiples of 10. And then you just kind of keep on building from there. But you have to have that mindset that you want to do what you have to do, to sacrifice what you have to sacrifice to be able to get there. And once you're able to get there, then you can actually spread the love and help other people and venture out into other things that you want to do.
Makes sense.
Yep,
Makes complete sense.
absolutely.
I was gonna rent this home that I'm in now. After I sold my last one, I said I was gonna rent this for 2 years. I remember saying that conversation, and I thought Teresa was gonna jump through the phone. Teresa said, "No, you're not. Your Christmas gift to yourself is another one." And it's the mindset of stop being afraid, stop hesitating, stop holding back. And it made me realize I don't want my kids to come out of college and go get an apartment. I really would like them for them to have a house. I want them to
Absolutely.
get used to that single house, that house you have by yourself, and you can rent that. You can do whatever you want to do with it, but get them into that mindset early. Because I grew up, and my grandparents lived off of Brookfield Road in the Chimneys. When we grew up, my grandparents rented an apartment for 30 years.
Oh yeah, yeah.
When my grandfather bought the house that my grandma and us, lived in after when I was in high school, he died on his while he was getting that taken care of. But had he done that house before then, the years he gave to that apartment, he would have died paying off a house, not approving for a house. So when I got out of school, my thing was I'm gonna have a house before I'm 30, and I did it. And I'm gonna have another one before I hit this age, and so on and so on. And my uncle did the same thing, and we just had a different. So each generation got better, but I did it at this age. I want them to do it at a different age, and I want them to get used to that because I don't want that mindset no more. We're not walking around here scared of money no more.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You just got to
yeah,
change that whole narrative, change generations worth of things that we've been set back from to actually do better for our future. So
absolutely. And and to your earlier point, Jermaine, I certainly think that we as a people shouldn't be afraid to talk about money. It is a conversation we definitely need to have. However, comma pause. If this is our first date and you asking me how much money I make, there will not be a second. Just FYI.
If this your first date,
hey,
y'all really like
hey,
each
I
other.
don't know.
Communities
Hey,
do
well,
We
it.
in a new
you might need to
generation.
have it.
You probably been DMing and texting for months and days and times. So if you done DM'd and text for 3 months and y'all go on a date and she be like, I mean, where you see yourself at and where your stuff? I don't want to go no more. I don't want to date you either because you're scared to talk about money. Right now, we ain't gonna have that for the first few years.
Nope. I ain't scared. I just don't want to. No, I'm playing. I do want to ask you guys one more question though, and while we're talking about like relationships and significant others, what are the pros and cons of purchasing a home with a partner or significant other?
So from a lender, I'll say this: if you're not married, don't buy a home together. Because I've seen some big things happen. Because here's what happens: if you guys aren't married, and let's just say you decided to separate, well, there's always an angry party, right? Somebody's upset, somebody's not liking you right now, so they're not going to do what's in the best interest of both parties. Some people, they want to do what's best for them. Some people just won't do what's best for them because of you. So you got to kind of take that in consideration. You want to be with somebody that you guys have the same goal in mind. You love each other. You're looking to start a future together. But if you're not married, I would go against it. But at the end of the day, everybody has to do what's best for them, right? So my computer's about to die. Go ahead. Let me get my charger.
Yeah, I'm in totally agreeing with them. So if you're not married, definitely, I'm not gonna say you can't buy a house, you can't have mortgage together or have somebody's name on the deed. So, but I would say this, especially if you're not married, you want to be able to take care of those bills on your own, right? With just your income, right? So in the event that something does, y'all break up, right? Because there's no marital status right there. However, state of South Carolina does have some laws, so you have to look into those laws when it comes to people living in your house. But if you're not married, you want to be able to make sure that you can pay for all your bills with your own income. And that's going to set you up for your future. Great, because if you do get married and y'all do tie, now you have another income that's in the house that y'all can just use to save, right? And you do other investments with. But you definitely want to buy based on where your current situation is. If your name's the only one on the mortgage, you want to make sure that you're able to. Well, one, you're only going to be able to. It's going to be based on your income, so you want to just make sure you're able to handle all your bills, and then kind of just keep going from there and look at other ideas to do.
Yeah.
Chris, marriage date is close to your closing date. Big time. If your wedding date is close to your closing date, don't do your thing. But if y'all don't even have a date set, don't sign nothing. Don't do it. Reconsider. Read some literature on the subject. Don't. Because that is a legal binding deal that you're in with somebody that you don't even have a legal binding contract with. Meaning you can't even go to court and have a divorce where they tell you how you're going to handle. What you're going to end up doing is you got to go to you got to have a civil matter and hope that it works out, because relationships don't last some time. I mean, you're dating with no plans of marriage, but you're going to go into a 30-year mortgage with somebody. Don't.
Yeah, you my investment partner at that time. That's
a big thing. I don't want to give you my name, but I want to sign this 30-year mortgage with you because we're going to do this thing for 30 years.
I would also suggest, and this is what somebody taught me a long time ago, even when you are married and you go to buy a home, go off the lowest person's income.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, the person that makes the breadwinner, you can just save that money and do whatever you need to do and go off. That way you have a cheap mortgage. You don't have, these large payments. And as a loan officer, what I see a lot is I see a lot of people come through and they go off the joint income.
Yep.
And mind you, when we do the loan, we go off a gross. That's not your net.
Right.
So,
right.
I always kind of give people, I try to give them advice like, hey, you're living off your net, even though we're going off gross. So yeah, you qualify technically in my eyes for a $350,000 house. But when that net comes through, remember your net is all 25 to 35% lower than the gross, right?
Right.
So that's 25 to 35% that you won't have, and now you're at the top of your budget, and you're going to be struggling when you get this house. I always tell people the easiest thing for me is to get you a house. The hardest thing for you is keeping up with that house, because with
Right.
anything breaks, it's your job to fix. It's your
Absolutely.
job to fix it. You got to pay. Yeah, we have home warranties and things, but for the most part, you're gonna have to fix everything in that house because it's yours.
Yeah, and
Life also
absolutely.
happens. People got sick for COVID.
Mhm.
Their jobs closed. Things happen, and when income changes, the struggles get real. Life lesson number one that I've learned in my trips around the sun: the combined income is not a great idea to buy a house off of, because when the combined income changes for the down direction or something shifts, you have a whole new struggle to do. And right. Payment shock will send you to the, because financial hardships bring a struggle. It's a trickle effect to other things that you deal with in your marriage. So it is a big thing to death again, and that's in a marriage with someone that you told God you're gonna be with till death do you part. Imagine somebody who you could be like, listen, I'm gonna change my Facebook status and we over, but you got a 30-year mortgage with them. I ain't for it. They might say try it out. I say no, but it's just make sure that if you do this, it's yours, it's you. I want all my kids to own homes before they even sign a marriage license. I want them to have that experience on their own, so that if
Right.
something happens, you have yours. Because in a marriage, when you do go, maybe one gets it, maybe one doesn't, maybe you both have to move and you both have to start over. At least if you have that thing that you had on your own that somebody might be renting, you can kind of get that out and have your place to go to. But have that experience by yourself before you do it with someone else, so that you are better equipped when you do it later. Don't buy it if y'all ain't married. I'm not gonna tell y'all that no more.
Yeah,
No.
there definitely has to be a sit down when you're thinking about buying a house. Me and my wife will always tell every client that we sit down, we do a consultation with, like, not really how much you got to prove for, but how much are you comfortable with spending each month. I don't care about how much you got to prove for. I want to know how much are you comfortable with spending each month on, not on all your bills, as well as adding on a mortgage, adding on another $1,000, $1,200, whatever it is. Now take that number, go back to your lender, and be like, how much am I approved for to be able to spend $1,200 a month?
Yeah.
Plain and simple. That will save you over it all. Because like he said, like Randall said before, they go off the gross. But that net's what you bring home. You know how you want to spend your money. You know how much money you have saved up or how much you have available to spend on the mortgage. That's where we need to build that plan from.
So I do have a quick question before we start doing the give your advices before we go. I hear things about interest rates right now. I know it's a seller's market and sellers have really good price. Well, they getting good money, but these houses are high. When I bought my
Mhm.
house, I bought my house years ago. These houses now are $40,000 more a year or more. The price total is more. Like I might have paid, pretend I paid 150. Right now, that house might be 215 right now. What are interest rates right now, and what is that helping those of us who do want that $1,200 mortgage? Because see, that's a good number.
Well, interest rates are still relatively low. People came up a little bit to still low threes, in some instances high twos, but I mean that's still historically low interest rates. It's
Yeah.
not going to get any lower than that, because basically you got to look at the interest that's going to be paid back to the bank. I always tell people, a lot of people tell me, well, I'm going to wait until it's a seller's market. Who's to say when that's going to happen? What are you waiting for? Are you an economist? Even an economist is wrong. I would say if you have the opportunity to get a house, get it now while homes are appreciating. That way, I have several clients to where I did their mortgage a year ago. They're now selling that home and getting a bigger home, and they have the same payment because they're using the equity in their home to put down on the new home to where their payments are the same. So the sooner you get in, the sooner you'll start building that equity. If you're renting now, saying you're going to wait, I mean, just keep on waiting. You're just wasting more money because that year, 2 years, 3 years that you're waiting, that could be 3 years that you've been paying on a mortgage to where now you build that equity up. So I always tell people, like, if you can do it now because rates are still historically low. Now, I don't think rates are always going to be this low, but who am I? We said that 2 years ago, and rates went to 2%. So, all I would say is if you have the opportunity to buy now. Don't worry about the rates, because at the end of the day, if rates are at 10%, people still want to be homeowners,
You're
right? If
absolutely
you look at 15, 20, 30 years ago, rates were in the 20% range, and people were still buying homes because guess what? That's still better than renting because at least you own it. So whether rates go to 2%, 20%, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's yours, you're an owner, and you're still building equity in that home versus making somebody else rich paying their rent.
right. Hey, Randall, like, so this is one of the biggest things that I talk to a lot of people about all the time, right? We're at a 2.22 between 3%, right? But historically, if you're at a 6%, you're still historically low.
Low. Yeah.
So if like people have forgotten, our generation have forgotten what that 6%, 7%, 8% looks like, right? So everybody's like, if I'm at 3%, if I'm at 4%, I'm not buying a house. Listen, you are still historically low. Buy a house. When it jumps back up to like 6, 7%,
Yeah.
we're still low, but you still need to buy a house. Our grandparents had interest rates around 12, 16, 20%.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? So if you think about where we are right now, yes, interest rates are extremely low. It's the perfect time to buy if you can find a house to buy and and you can be competitive with it. But at the same time, as we continue to, as interest rates will, because they will eventually rise, it's just going to happen, right? So if they get up to 6%, you're still in a good place to buy a house. If they get up to 7%, 8%, then we're going to start having that conversation about how we're going to try to change some things around. But as interest rates continue to grow or go up, just know that if it's below 6%, you are still historically low.
So right now, are a lot of programs still offering the option to buy your points down,
Oh yeah, you can
even though
still
the
buy.
rates are low?
Yeah, you always have that option to buy points.
All good stuff, man. I really appreciate the commentary. This has been very eye-opening, and I hope the viewers and the audience have a lot of takeaways as well. And while we're talking about takeaways, before we head out, Randall and Jermaine, I want you guys to what are some last nuggets, some things you want to leave the audience with? And Jermaine, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, for me, I'll just tell people like build that plan whenever it comes to actually buy a home. First step, go ahead and talk to that mortgage lender. Find yourself a realtor. Build out that plan that you want to build based on what your current picture is, and kind of go from there. Decide right now that I want to be a homeowner, and I'm going to go ahead and start this process. And once you have that in your mind, you'll end up doing anything and whatever you need to do to end up purchasing a house in this current market or in any market.
All right, good stuff. Randall, what you got?
Well, I would say, I get this a lot of people like, well, because I always ask people, why aren't you a homeowner? And the number one excuse I get, oh, my credit. And I was like, okay, so what are we going to do to change that? That's kind of the number one answer we get. Not everybody, but most people have had bad credit a point in their life, right? Are you going to let that excuse hold you down forever? Like at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to get a home because that's the American dream. A home is your biggest asset. If you look at the top 3% of wealth in the United States of America, 97% of that 3% have real estate dealings, right? So they own some type of real estate, and most of them own multiple estates. So that's the way you want to go. All it takes is one house to start kind of your real estate portfolio. And I've seen people, and I have a friend that did this. He bought a home, he loved the home, figured he moved, right? He said, I wanted to move. Well, he moved in 2 years. He made $80,000 on that home in 2 years. He took that 80,000 and then he bought a neighborhood. Well, guess what? That neighborhood today is worth over $1 million. So literally overnight, he became a millionaire. Overnight, just by taking that 80,000 that he made and buying 6 more homes, he became a millionaire overnight. And it's just, it's exciting to see that people that look like me are now doing things that I thought couldn't be done. you know. And as you know, as a loan officer, I'm being aware of these all, you know, programs that's available, and it's encouraging. It's like, well, if somebody else can do it, so can we. We just need the education. So if anybody has any questions, give me a call, send me an email, text me. I'm here to answer.
Good stuff. I appreciate it. And again, this has been a phenomenal conversation, guys. And now that we have all the serious talk out of the way, Chris, what are we talking about next week?
Monopoly, because that's what all this sounds like, and y'all need to play it this weekend. Listen. And he just made a valid point. Y'all sitting there talking about we can't talk about money on the first day. That man bought a neighborhood. Y'all better ask the right question. Something wrong with y'all. You might not date. That's all right, because you ain't bought a neighborhood yet. That brother did. He gonna tell you he got that neighborhood soon. So next week, since we're talking about money, we're going to be talking about what makes you marriage material, preferably someone who wants to talk about real life situations when the first few dates. So, but Hook already engaged, so don't worry about him. But we're going to talk about what makes someone marriage material. My cousin always makes a joke. Sometimes we out here talking about, oh, this person is the bad boy, or the F boy, or different things we say, but sometimes the problem is you. So we're going to discuss what makes someone, yourself or significant other, actual marriage material. And we're gonna, that'll be it, you know, when I entertain, and we'll cut up a little bit, but I'm about to go figure out this game of Monopoly. I'm gonna aggravate you plenty, Randall, because you just said everybody can call and text you, and I'm gonna follow that up. Jermaine, don't get comfortable. You and Ro gonna get aggravated plenty as well, also.
Yeah. So, and again, man, this was phenomenal, Randall. I appreciate you, Jermaine, you and Rhonda as well. I appreciate you guys. Chris, as always, I appreciate everything you do. Here we only on Mondays. Only on Mondays.
That's right, because tomorrow I'll be bothered with you.
And as you can see with the ticker at the bottom, yeah, check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, and across all podcast platforms. We appreciate the support. Next week is going to be extremely interesting, so be on the lookout for the promos for that. But once again, for my guests, we really appreciate you guys. And for the audience, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Guys hold on for a second.